Welcome to another deep dive, everybody. Today we're going to be looking at a potential new cancer treatment called Indatuximab.
Oh, yeah?
And we're basing this off an article from Assay Genie,
Okay.
which is, a scientific resource.
hmm
So you can kind of think of this as a cheat sheet for y'all to understand what it is, how it works, and why it's so exciting.
It is. It's a fascinating development. Indatuximab is what's called an antibody-drug conjugate, or ADC for
Oh,
short.
okay.
Um, and it represents a move toward more targeted cancer therapies,
Right.
which is something that I think we're seeing a lot of exciting progress in lately.
Yeah, so that sounds pretty technical, antibody drug conjugate. What does that actually mean, like for someone going through treatment?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Hmm.
It's all about precision.
Okay.
So instead of attacking all dividing cells,
Right.
as traditional chemotherapy does, an ADC
Mm-hmm.
is designed to zero in on specific cancer cells.
So carpet bomb versus surgical strike.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, you got it.
Okay.
And Indatuximab specifically targets a protein called CD138,
Okay.
which is found on the surface of certain cancer cells.
So how does it actually find and attach to those CD138 proteins?
Well, that's where the antibody part of the ADC comes in.
Okay.
Antibodies are, these amazing little proteins that our immune system uses to identify and latch onto foreign invaders,
Right.
like bacteria or viruses.
So they kind of just took that natural process and were like, hey, let's make this recognize CD138.
Exactly. Yeah, they've engineered an antibody
Wow.
that specifically recognizes CD138.
Okay.
And that leads the attached cytotoxic drug directly to the cancer cell.
So what is the drug in this case?
In this case, it's called DM4.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing it's not enough to just like get it to the cell.
Right. It's not enough to just be on the surface.
Right.
Once the indatuximab binds to CD138, the cancer cell actually engulfs the entire molecule
Oh, wow.
and brings it inside.
Tricking it into taking in its own demise.
It's sneaky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then what happens?
So once inside, the DM4 is released
Yeah.
and goes to work disrupting the cancer cell's internal structure,
What part?
specifically something called microtubules.
Microtubules, those don't sound very menacing.
I know, right?
Chuckles.
They don't sound very scary, but they're crucial
Okay.
for the cell to function.
Yeah.
They help with cell division,
Okay.
maintaining the cell shape.
Right.
You can think of them as the scaffolding that holds everything together.
Right.
And DM4 disrupts that scaffolding,
Wow.
prevents the cancer cell from dividing, and eventually leads to its self-destruction.
So it's like sabotaging the factory from the inside.
Yeah, exactly.
And this
No.
is where that targeted approach really shines, right?
Yeah,
Because if it's only attacking those cells with CD138,
right.
then it's not doing like all that widespread damage
Yeah.
that we see with
You
chemo.
got it. You hit the nail on the head.
Circles.
That's the key advantage here. One of the biggest challenges with traditional chemotherapy is that it attacks all rapidly dividing cells, not just cancer cells.
Right.
And that leads to, all those awful side effects that we're unfortunately familiar with.
Right.
The hair loss, the nausea, the fatigue, weakened immune system.
Oh, yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it really does seem like Indatuximab has the potential to change the game for a lot of people.
Yeah, it does.
The article mentioned that they're looking at it for two different types of cancer,
Right.
multiple myeloma and renal cell carcinoma.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a reason they chose those two?
Yeah. The reason that those two were chosen comes down to that CD138 protein that we've been talking about. Both multiple myeloma and renal cell carcinoma tend to have high levels of CD138.
Gotcha. So they're both susceptible.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're good candidates for this type of targeted therapy.
Like a lock and key.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about those two types of cancer. The article specifically mentioned that they were seeing some promise with relapsed and refractory multiple myeloma.
Right.
Can you break down what that means?
Sure. Relapsed and refractory multiple myeloma
Okay.
refers to cases where the cancer has either returned after initial treatment.
Okay.
That's the relapse part.
Gotcha.
Or it hasn't responded to other therapies.
Okay.
That's the refractory part.
So basically people who have very few options left.
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay.
And that's why the early results of Indatuximab
Right.
in this group are so encouraging. It offers a potential new lifeline for patients who have run out of other options.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And what about renal cell carcinoma?
Yeah, so for renal cell carcinoma, it's still early days.
Okay.
But the fact that it's even being explored for this type of cancer is a testament to its potential.
Mm.
Early studies suggest it might be effective, but we need more research and clinical trials to confirm its safety and effectiveness in the long term.
So don't get too excited yet,
That's okay,
Chuckles,
yeah.
but there's a lot of potential.
Definitely.
This Assay Genie article also mentioned something called a biosimilar
Yes.
in relation to Indatuximab.
Uh-huh.
What is a biosimilar and why is it relevant?
Yeah, that's a great point.
Mhm.
Biosimilars are essentially highly similar versions
Okay.
of existing biologic drugs like Indatuximab.
Okay.
I want to emphasize the highly similar part.
Okay.
They undergo rigorous testing and have to meet very strict regulatory standards to ensure they are essentially the same
Okay.
as the original drug in terms of safety, purity, and effectiveness.
So why even bother? Why not just use the original drug?
Well, biosimilars play a crucial role in making these complex and often expensive treatments more accessible to patients.
Oh, okay.
They also help drive down costs, which can be a major barrier for many people.
So is Assay Genie offering a biosimilar of this?
They are.
They are.
But it's important to note that their biosimilar is specifically for research purposes.
Okay.
This allows scientists to study the drug's mechanisms,
Okay.
explore its potential applications in other cancers,
Right.
and even potentially find ways to improve upon the original.
Oh, wow.
So it's all about pushing the boundaries of what's possible in cancer treatment.
So opening up a whole new avenue?
Yeah.
This is all really fascinating.
It is.
I'm learning a lot.
Good. I'm
What
confident.
else?
Yeah, it really is. And the fact that Assay Genie is offering this Indatuximab biosimilar for research, is a testament to their commitment to scientific advancement
Yeah.
and collaboration in the field.
It's really cool to see companies investing in this kind of research that could, potentially benefit so many people.
Absolutely.
I have to say this deep dive has really opened my eyes to how much progress is being made
Yeah.
in targeted cancer therapies.
It's a very exciting time to be in the field for sure.
It's inspiring.
Yeah. And we have to remember that this progress is only possible because of the dedication and hard work
Right.
of countless researchers, clinicians, and of course the bravery of patients participating in clinical trials.
Absolutely. Those patients are the real pioneers.
They are.
So we've talked about the mechanism of it and the cancers that it's being studied for, but
Great.
but I'd love to hear more about how it stacks up against existing treatments.
Okay.
So for example, in the case of multiple myeloma,
Yeah.
how does Indatuximab compare to the current standard of care?
That's a great question. While it's still relatively early in the development process,
Right.
clinical trials have shown that Indatuximab, especially when combined with other drugs,
Okay.
has the potential to be more effective
Wow.
than some of the current standard treatments for multiple myeloma.
Okay.
We're seeing promising results in terms of overall response rates,
Yeah.
meaning the percentage of patients whose tumors shrink or disappear, and progression-free survival,
Mhm.
which is the length of time a patient lives with the disease without it getting worse.
That's really encouraging.
It is, yeah.
But I'm guessing no treatment is perfect.
Mm.
Are there any limitations or challenges
Oh, for it.
in Indatuximab that researchers are still working to overcome?
Yeah, like
Right.
any drug Indatuximab has potential side effects.
Right.
Some of the most common ones observed in clinical trials include low blood cell counts
Okay.
and some gastrointestinal issues.
Okay.
But it's important to note that these side effects are often manageable,
Right.
and many patients find them to be less severe.
Right. Less severe than chemo.
Yeah, exactly.
Are there any other challenges? I imagine targeting cancer cells with this level of precision must be incredibly complex.
It is. It definitely is.
Chuckles.
One of the ongoing challenges with targeted therapies like Indatuximab
Yeah.
is the potential for drug resistance.
Okay.
Sometimes cancer cells can find ways to evade the drug's effects.
How does that happen?
Well, cancer cells are constantly evolving and mutating.
Right.
In some cases, they may develop mutations that allow them to bypass the specific protein that the drug targets,
Okay.
or they might develop ways to pump the drug out of the cell before it can do its job.
So it's like an arms race
It is kind of.
between the drug and the cancer.
Yeah, and that's why ongoing research is so critical.
Right.
Scientists are constantly looking for ways to improve these targeted therapies,
Right.
overcome drug resistance, and develop new treatments that can target different vulnerabilities in cancer cells.
Gotcha. So it's like a moving target,
It is, yeah, it's a moving target.
which must make it really hard.
It does make it challenging.
I'm curious about costs. We talked about how biosimilars can help with accessibility.
Right.
But, these kinds of cutting-edge therapies are often really expensive.
Yeah.
Is cost a factor with Indatuximab?
It's definitely a valid concern.
Mm.
Um, the development and production of these sophisticated therapies
Right.
is a complex and costly process. However, as with many new treatments, we often see costs come down over time as production becomes more efficient
Okay.
and more biosimilars enter the market.
Right.
And of course, there's a whole separate discussion to be had about healthcare policies
Right.
and ensuring that these life-saving treatments are accessible to everyone who needs them.
Absolutely. That's a whole other can of worms.
It is, yeah.
But for now, let's get back to the science. We talked earlier about Indatuximab's potential in treating relapsed and refractory multiple myeloma.
Yes.
Can you tell us more about what makes this such a significant development for these patients?
Yeah, I mean, it's a game changer for many of these patients because they've often exhausted all other treatment options.
Right.
They've gone through multiple rounds of chemotherapy, stem cell transplants, other therapies,
Right.
and their cancer has either returned or become resistant to those treatments.
It's rough.
It is.
And this is like a whole new option for them.
It is. It offers them a new line of attack, a potential way to control their disease and extend their lives when there may have been very little hope before.
That's incredible to think that a single treatment could have such a profound impact on people's lives.
It really is.
And while we're focusing on multiple myeloma and renal cell carcinoma today,
Yeah.
I can't help but wonder about the potential of Indatuximab for other types of cancer.
Right.
Are there any other cancers that are being investigated as potential targets for this therapy?
That's a great question and one that researchers are actively exploring.
Okay.
The key, as we've discussed, is that CD138 protein.
Right.
Any cancer that expresses high levels of CD138 could potentially be susceptible to Indatuximab.
So is it just a matter of identifying those cancers and then testing it against them?
It's not quite that simple, unfortunately.
Okay.
While identifying cancers with high CD138 expression is the first step,
Right.
there are many other factors to consider.
Okay.
The location of the tumor, the specific characteristics of the cancer cells, the patient's overall health,
Okay.
all play a role in determining whether a particular treatment is appropriate.
So there's a lot of research and testing that has
Yeah.
to go into it before we can say definitively whether it'll work or not.
Exactly. But the fact that we have this targeted therapy that's showing such promise in multiple myeloma and renal cell carcinoma
Right.
gives us reason to be optimistic about its potential applications in other cancers as well.
Yeah. It's really exciting to think about all the different possibilities.
Yeah, it is.
And it all goes back to that idea of moving away from the one-size-fits-all approach
Right.
to cancer treatment and towards more personalized therapies.
Absolutely.
It's a far cry from the days of just chemo.
It is, yeah.
I'm curious, what are some of the other exciting developments happening
Oh.
in the field of targeted cancer therapy right now? Like, what else should we be keeping an eye on?
Oh, there's so much happening. It's a really dynamic field.
Tackles. Okay.
One area that's particularly exciting is immunotherapy.
Immunotherapy. I've heard that term before, but can you remind me what it is?
Certainly.
Hmm.
Immunotherapy essentially harnesses the power of the body's own immune system to fight cancer.
Okay.
Um, there are different types of immunotherapy.
Right.
But the basic idea is to either stimulate the immune system
Yes.
to attack cancer cells more effectively,
Okay.
or to remove the brakes that are preventing the immune system from doing its job.
So it's like giving it a boost or removing the obstacles
Exactly. Yeah.
that are holding it back.
Yeah, and some of the results we're seeing with immunotherapy are truly remarkable.
Okay.
In some cases, we're seeing long-term remissions and even cures in cancers
Wow.
that were previously considered untreatable.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It sounds like immunotherapy and targeted therapies like Indatuximab could be a really powerful combination.
They absolutely could. And in fact, researchers are already exploring combinations of these therapies
wow.
to see if they can achieve even better outcomes for patients.
So it's like a 1-2 punch. You target the cancer cells with the Indatuximab, and then you get the immune system to
Great.
finish it off.
That's a great way to think about it.
And it's not just immunotherapy, right? They're looking at other combinations.
Yeah, they're looking at combinations of targeted therapies with other treatments like radiation therapy,
Okay.
chemotherapy, and even gene therapy.
Gene therapy. That sounds futuristic.
Yeah, it does.
Chuckles. What exactly is gene therapy, and how might it play a role in cancer treatment?
Yeah, so gene therapy is a relatively new approach
Okay.
that involves altering the genes within cells to treat or prevent disease.
Okay.
In the context of cancer, gene therapy can be used to do things like insert genes into cancer cells
Okay.
that make them more susceptible to other treatments,
Gotcha.
or to modify immune cells to make them better at targeting and destroying cancer cells.
Wow. It sounds like science fiction is becoming reality.
It is pretty amazing.
And I imagine these combination therapies could potentially lead to like fewer side effects and better outcomes for patients.
That's the hope. The beauty of these combination approaches
Yeah.
is that they can attack the cancer from multiple angles,
Right.
making it more difficult for the cancer cells to develop resistance
Wow.
and potentially leading to more durable responses.
This is all incredibly exciting. It seems like the future of cancer treatment is really moving towards this idea of personalized medicine,
It is.
where treatments are tailored to the individual patient
Yeah,
and their specific type of cancer.
absolutely. It truly is a paradigm shift.
It's amazing. And it's not just about the treatments themselves, right?
Right.
It's also about using, sophisticated diagnostic tools
Yeah.
to better understand the genetic makeup
Hmm.
of each patient's cancer,
Right.
which allows doctors to choose the most effective therapies for that person.
Exactly.
So-
Taking a personalized approach from diagnosis to treatment.
Yeah. It sounds like we're entering like a whole new era of cancer care.
I think we are. And while there's still much work to be done, the progress we're seeing in targeted therapies,
Mhm.
immunotherapy, and other innovative approaches
Yeah.
gives us all reason to be hopeful about the future.
I couldn't agree more. It's been a really fascinating deep dive
Yeah.
into the world of Indatuximab and the future of cancer treatment.
It's been a pleasure discussing this with you.
Yeah.
The pace of innovation in this field is truly remarkable.
And I think it's important to acknowledge the role that companies like Assay Genie
Yes.
are playing in driving this progress. Their commitment to research and development, especially in the area of biosimilars,
Right.
is helping to make these life-saving treatments more accessible to patients around the world.
Absolutely. Their work is critical to advancing the field and bringing hope to those who need it most.
I'm so glad we had the opportunity to do this deep dive into Indatuximab.
Me
It's giving me a renewed sense of optimism about the fight against cancer.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with something to ponder.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about how Indatuximab targets CD138 to deliver its cytotoxic payload.
Right.
But what if we could use that same targeted approach to deliver other types of treatments?
Oh, that's an interesting thought.
Like immunotherapy or gene therapy?
Yeah. Are you thinking about things like immunotherapy or gene therapy?
Exactly. If we can use antibodies to deliver these powerful therapies directly to cancer cells,
Right.
the potential benefits could be even greater.
They could.
Imagine boosting the immune system's ability to fight cancer.
Yeah.
Or even reprogramming the cancer cells themselves.
It's mind-boggling to consider the possibilities.
It is.
And it really highlights how this type of research can pave the way for entirely new treatment paradigms.
Yeah, it's like we're standing on the cusp of a whole new era
I think so.
in cancer treatment.
Yeah.
And that's a really exciting place to be.
It is a very exciting time.
Chuckles. All right, so I think it's time to wrap up this part of our deep dive.
Okay.
But stay tuned, because in our next segment,
Yeah.
we'll delve even deeper into the potential of Indatuximab and explore some of the ethical considerations surrounding these cutting-edge therapies.
I'm looking forward to.
Welcome back to the show. So we've been spending some time now talking about Indatuximab,
Yeah.
and I feel like I've learned a lot about it.
Good.
But before we wrap up today's deep dive, we wanted to touch on one more thing.
Okay.
The ethical considerations
Right.
that come with these kinds of powerful new treatments.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a crucial point. As with any medical advancement,
Right.
especially one that holds so much promise, we need to be mindful of the potential implications
Mm-hmm.
and ensure that these therapies are used responsibly and equitably.
Okay, so what are some of the specific ethical concerns that might arise with a treatment like this?
Well, one of the most pressing issues is access.
Okay.
These targeted therapies are incredibly complex
Right.
to develop and produce, which often translates to high costs.
Mm-hmm.
We need to make sure that these treatments are accessible to all patients who need them, regardless of their financial situation or geographic location.
It's amazing that we're seeing all this progress
Yeah.
in cancer treatment, but it's important to make sure that everybody benefits.
Absolutely. And it's not just about access.
Okay.
We also need to think carefully about informed consent.
Okay.
Patients need to have a clear understanding of the potential benefits and risks
Mm-hmm.
of any treatment they're considering, including experimental therapies like Indatuximab.
So empowering patients to make decisions about their own health care.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And that involves having open and honest conversations with their doctors,
Right.
understanding the potential side effects, and being aware of the uncertainties that often come with new treatments.
Are there any other ethical considerations that we should be thinking about?
Yeah, another important aspect is the allocation of resources.
Oh, okay.
Developing and researching these advanced therapies
Right.
requires significant financial investment.
Yeah.
As a society, we need to have thoughtful discussions about how to prioritize funding for medical research
Mhm.
and ensure that we're making wise investments
Mm-hmm.
that will benefit the greatest number of people.
That's a big question.
It is. It's a complex issue.
Always tough choices to make.
There are.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to have these conversations
Right.
and involve a wide range of stakeholders, scientists, clinicians, ethicists, policymakers,
Mm-hmm.
of course, patients themselves in the decision-making process.
So it's about finding that balance between, pushing the boundaries of
Yeah.
scientific innovation
Right,
and
yeah.
also making sure that we're being responsible with it.
Exactly. And that's where ethical considerations play such a crucial role. It's not just about what we can do, but also what we should do.
Great power, great responsibility.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we've covered what Indatuximab is, how it works, the potential benefits and challenges, and we've even talked about some of the ethical things to think about.
Right.
I feel like we've taken a pretty comprehensive deep dive here.
I think we have. I hope our listeners feel equipped to
Yeah.
continue exploring this topic
Yeah.
and engage in thoughtful conversations about the future of cancer treatment.
Me too. I'm personally feeling incredibly optimistic
Yeah.
about the future of cancer care. But before we sign off, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about how Indatuximab targets CD138
Right.
to deliver the cytotoxic payload. But what if we could use that same targeted approach
Right.
to deliver other types of treatments, like immunotherapy or gene therapy?
Now that's a truly thought-provoking question.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the incredible power of scientific innovation and human ingenuity.
It does. It's like we're on the edge of something really big.
Yeah, it is.
Exciting.
It's an exciting time to be alive and to witness these remarkable breakthroughs unfolding before our eyes.
All right, so to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Indatuximab and beyond. We hope you found it as fascinating as we did.
Until next time.
And remember, the pursuit of knowledge is a journey best shared. So tell a friend, spark a conversation, and let's continue to dive deep into the world of science together.